Hi, everybody. This is Purpose People Podcast. We've actually decamped into another room. We've got a fire running. And so the idea is that by the time the fire's finished, we run out of things to say. So what we're going to look at today is about software. And I'm going to speak to my co-founder in Digital, the company that builds software, and surprisingly, embracing new technologies such as no code. But we're going to find out the origin story and the journey so far and how Andrius is living life on purpose. So welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So Andrius, just tell us a little bit about the journey for you going from as far as like working in remote areas to now be involved in high tech.
Yeah, sure. So since I guess I'll go back to when it all started, when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
The first memory I have of software is when my granddad got me a gift, a book,
Okay.
and just sat with me in front of a computer and walked me through those first, hello world exercises in programming. So that's where it all began. And I remember instantly loving the whole idea of being able to tell a computer what to do and then watching it execute my commands. It's like a puzzle, but an interactive one that you can program. So I loved it.
Yeah.
And so a couple of years later, while in school, started getting into more and more coding, web development, game development. Everything that you can think of. And then eventually after school, at that point I actually lived in Malawi. My parents were doing charity work.
Okay.
So we moved back. We actually moved to UK, and my little brothers were still in school. So because they started school in Malawi in English, it was good for them to kind of carry that on. And so at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that software is something that I love.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I also really enjoyed 3D, animation, visual effects.
Yeah.
And so I went to Finland, where my granddad and grandmom lives.
Yeah.
And enrolled in a degree to do media engineering.
Wow. So you went from Malawi to Finland. You're sort of a bit of a global traveler.
Yeah. Yeah. And funny enough, I got into uni. I started doing the onboarding into the course, and instantly knew that this didn't feel right to me at that time.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of just had maybe 2 years of a break, of a gap year, to just think of what I really want to do. Mm-hmm. And so I spent that time in Bristol, and that's when I met you actually, and Simon, and got into the whole idea of web development, WordPress, things like that.
Yeah, because we were part of a charitable setup, and so we kind of met each other through that charity and being involved and working together. And you come on board as a web designer, if I remember rightly. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did a bit of everything at that point.
Yeah, a bit of video editing as well.
Yeah, because creation at that point was also not big, right? Mm. And so everyone wore so many different hats.
Yeah.
So I did video, I did audio, web, whatever needed doing, I kind of jumped in. Yeah. And so it was great to have people like, like you, like Simon, like George around to kind of just give me training, mentoring, and help me out in those first kind of commercial web development steps. Yeah. Because before I was doing it for fun, not so serious.
And I think for me, the interesting journey that you were on is that you're very much behind the screen doing code, not interacting with clients, so to speak. And then there was that transition where you started to handle and work with clients on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
What was the biggest sort of like shift you felt from almost locking yourself away with some headphones with code to dealing with clients? What was it?
Yeah, I think to step back from the screen and actually have to deal with scope and project and business concerns, It was quite challenging. I always was very happy to just, put those headphones on and spend 8 hours straight coding. But I think the biggest difference is I had to learn to think about the end goal and the customer and the user.
Yeah.
I think a lot of developers and software people in general tend to kind of fixate on the technical.
Yeah.
What's the challenge in front of me? What algorithm I'm trying to implement? What bug am I trying to fix?
Yeah.
And forget about the users, forget about the actual pain that we're trying to prevent, the actual problems we're trying to fix. So that helped me just kind of see that a bit more clearly. And now I believe that, if you don't understand as a developer of what actual problem for a user you're fixing, you can't be completely efficient and you might miss important things.
It's very much for me the art of, being in this world, which is quite technical. The art for me is to take the problem and simplify it. I think the biggest learning curve that I've realized is that actually building the whole thing in one go is not right for a client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Like you might quote $100,000 to build this beautiful thing, but that's actually not what it is. Yeah. And unless you've been doing it like it's a legacy system, so to speak. But where I'm thinking is that if someone comes to you and says, right, I want to build the Uber for X, we won't quote them, it's going to cost you $150,000. It's more, right, how do we make this as simple as possible to launch it for the least amount of time with the least amount of money to get the most amount of feedback and quick?
Yeah, and it took me the last 10 years, since we met, to kind of realize those things because, as you say, so many clients do come and say, I want a fixed cost, fixed scope, fixed timeline, let's get everything done in one go. And if anything, I've learned the lesson that leads to a situation where we make too many assumptions at the beginning.
Yeah.
We think we know the user. We think we know all the problems the user will have. And we design the solution around that.
Yeah.
Only to find that 1 year down the line, we made a little miscalculation in how people are going to use it. And now we have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
But it's very expensive to fix errors once you've already launched the system. It's much cheaper to do that if you keep the initial scope small.
Yeah.
Let's launch one feature first, 2 features, get some feedback, get some data, and make an informed decision of what we should do next.
Yeah. And I think that feedback loop is absolutely vital in software now because software moves at such a pace. Let's say you get that $100,000 project and all of a sudden by the time you finish it, the software's gone or someone's come up with a software with so many more developers that's far further ahead than yours and you're out of date.
Yeah. Like with Instagram, for example, doing Reels. So imagine you're building a social app and then halfway through it, TikTok comes out. And now suddenly your whole format is wrong because everyone expects Reels and short form format. And so, so many companies use this old school waterfall methodology. Yeah. Upfront design, big design. And then you kind of drop down the waterfall and hope that what you end up with is the right solution, which it never works.
No. And so I guess the term or the technical term is MVP, minimum viable product. I think it's known as a lean methodology, and it's something that I stumbled across about 5 years ago. Yeah. And there's a book called The Lean Startup, and he tells a story about Zappos, the shoe company. They create this MVP by proving the assumption of people wouldn't buy shoes online. And that for me is incredible because everybody said it was impossible and they just did it and proved it right.
Yeah.
That actually their change in the market was people didn't want to spend money on parking. They didn't want to drive. They wanted to just click a button and get the shoes and major on essentially the returns policy if they didn't fit.
And the key, I think, in that is they made a very cheap, simple experiment.
Yeah.
They didn't build a whole massive system straight away. They started with a very basic approach. And that's what I think this is where the whole no-code thing is going and coming from.
Yeah.
Let's put something up together using existing tools, existing plugins, building blocks.
Yeah.
There's no need to build a whole user system from scratch every single time you want to test an idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what people used to do. We know how long things take. We know how long, building an e-commerce system from scratch takes.
Yeah.
Now you've got platforms like Shopify, where you can have a shop up and running in a day or two.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the whole industry is changing, I think, where traditional coding is going to be used more for really challenging domains, really complex situations where you need to go down and handle a lot of edge cases and things like that. But if you just, as a business, want to test an idea and see if you can take bookings online, let's say, there's no need to build that from scratch anymore. We can do that in a fraction of time, 5x reduction using tools like Webflow, Adalo, Bubble. There's so many now.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for me with the whole no-code world is we've got to a point where everyone has a demand for the technology. So there are loads of calculators out there. There's mortgage calculators, there's tax calculators. So there's a whole niche around building calculators for people.
Yeah.
And there's enough technology out there now where all you're doing is putting formulas in, making it look nice, creating a landing page, so to speak, and putting that in place. So that's calculators.
Right.
On the other thing is there's booking systems. So that's a whole thing in there. Everyone knows they need an online booking system. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe 5-10 years ago, it was a rarity that you could book things online.
Yeah.
But now, if you want to go to watch a film, it's an online booking system.
Yeah.
You don't actually walk in off the street often and go and buy your tickets on the day. You book it and turn up and go and watch. And I think that's what's changed, is where people are it's accepted now that I do this thing first online and then I go. So like if I'm going to go and do a mortgage application, I might do the pre-application on using a mortgage calculator and then try and get that agreement in principle first before I even meet a mortgage advisor, for example. That's what's changed with technology. And I think there's enough stuff out there now that you can build that and, get the feedback out immediately rather than spending 6-10 months trying to build something.
Yeah, it's all about speed. It's trading. There's always a trade. Nothing comes for free.
Yeah.
And the whole no-code thing is it's not a silver bullet for every problem.
Yeah.
We're trading some flexibility, some performance to get speed. And for a lot of startups, that is the key thing. We've talked to clients who say, well, we want to optimize the system to work for 1 million users.
Yeah.
And then we ask the question, how many users do you have right now? The answer is, well, we don't have any users yet. We want to optimize it for 1 million users. And the whole lean MVP no code philosophy says, let's optimize first for a dozen users, and then let's test the hypothesis. Is there a product market fit first of all?
Yeah.
So I think as an agency, we are realizing that more and more businesses, especially small to medium enterprises, need a faster, better, cheaper way to solve common software problems.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for me is that a lot of people are paying money in subscriptions, for example. They might pay 4 or 5 subscriptions. So just putting them all together as one and using no-code tools to mimic the functionality of each individual and put it all in one place is a great way to progress a business in terms of efficiency and spend. The interesting thing I find with that no-code world is that 2 years ago, I would say it was pretty poor, by comparison to where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's only getting better. And I think the driver behind that is just the cost of development in itself. I mean, we talk about how much people get paid in dev world and recruitment. And you've got average developers earning 80, 90 grand a year because they're desperate. When in fact, that throwing money at the problem with the personnel isn't the solution. the way's broken and we need to look at it differently. And I think that's why no code for me is exciting for us as technologists.
Yeah.
But it's great for the entrepreneur because now those things that seem way out of reach are now within reach. So they might dream up this purpose thing. And if they're aware of these no-code tools, can work with companies like us to go, hang on a second, we can do this quickly, we can do it simply, and we can do it lean.
Yeah, and and you made a good point about the whole industry, cost of developers, lack of developers. Every company is now a software company.
Yeah.
So
like Domino's Pizza, they see themselves as a software company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so platforms like Salesforce, HubSpot, they're just allowing you to do things that you would need software developers before. You can now do that with a couple of clicks. However, I think a good thing to talk about is, we are an agency, we're a software agency, and we're embracing this technology.
Yeah.
Because just because it says no code does not mean that it does not require expertise.
Yeah.
In understanding what it takes to build good software.
Yeah.
And I think code can come in many forms. And what no code really means is not that there is no code, because code is not necessarily text.
Yeah.
If you're building a system in a visual development environment, you're still coding in a way. You're just using visual blocks.
Yeah.
You still need the same kind of thinking. You still need the same kind of processes. The difference is that now you're thinking at a high level of abstraction.
Yeah.
You no longer need to think of what database do I choose, what server do I pick. Those choices are made for you, and you sacrifice a bit of flexibility for more speed. But developers should not be afraid for their jobs.
Yeah.
It's just that a lot of those jobs are going to be changing.
I agree. I think the big thing I've seen is that if you're a designer that almost moved into web design out of necessity because you felt that you were maybe being priced out of the market or you needed to diversify, I think as a designer now, building no-code tools is another viable turn in that journey. A friend of mine, Andy, who's on one of our podcasts, he was talking about being a graphic designer who got involved with web design using things like Squarespace to help people get up and going. Now he's transitioned with his business into a company called Film Duo. So he's focusing on film, and that's where he's diversified. But I think there was this thing of like designers are going to be irrelevant, but they're not. They're just, their skills can pivot in a different direction, because you can build stuff that works, but it's still got to look good and feel good. And, if it feels like it was built in 2000, then people aren't going to adopt it.
It's the same thing as Photoshop. Everyone downloads Photoshop and thinks, well, I'm a graphic designer now. Or you buy a camera and you think, I'm a photographer. And in some way you could say yes, but if you look at a picture taken by somebody who's taking their first photos, and a picture taken by somebody who's invested a decade, 2 decades of their life into it, it's going to look different. You're going to feel, you're going to know straight away, right? And the same thing with software, I think. No code is going to make the bar lower.
Yeah.
It's going to allow more people to come in and join the game.
Yeah.
But there'll still be the high end. Yeah. Where you will have companies who want to optimize performance, build customizations, and that's where you do need to dip into that code and fine-tune things.
And it is expensive. I mean, I think that's the big shift. The entry point has become cheaper and easier.
Yeah.
But the coding aspect of things become a lot more expensive. So unless you've got the backing and the finances and the time, essentially the cash flow to invest in something bespoke, where the end user is maybe seeing only a 1 or 2 or maybe 5% differential.
Right. Is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Or is it worth going down the no-code route? Mm-hmm. Yes, it works to a point in numbers of users, but what it does do is that if you are going to build from scratch, gives you confidence of employing those 80 grand a year developers now, because you know it works. And I mean, that's the biggest thing that the no-code world is doing, is giving people that sense of clarity that this is working, give them the ability there to have the confidence to invest in it, knowing that they are going to get a return, rather than go start a company 150 grand in debt, not knowing that people are going to adopt it.
Yeah. And we've seen this in with Canva, is it?
Yeah.
Now it's letting people start a business and get designs really quickly, really cheaply.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that 2 years down the line, when they grow, they won't reach to a expert marketing company and say, well, now we've outgrown Canva.
Yeah.
We need something custom. And so, we see companies build startups on no code, then kind of use these other tools which allow a bit of coding. There's this whole middle ground. They call it low code, where you use both. And then, of course, some parts might be rewritten and built custom. So, but it's a really good time, I think, to be a founder.
Yeah.
Because now you have access to all of this technology. You can get up and running in weeks, in months.
Yeah, and I think that's the excitement for me. Obviously, we're talking about purpose and purpose people, and people may decide that their purpose is to, let's say, change the hotel industry, or now it's a lot easier to do that using technology.
Yeah,
there's less of a barrier to adopt tech, first and foremost, because the world that we live in is now educated in that tech does solve a lot of problems. But the key thing is about the customer, and that allows us to communicate with the customer quickly, simply, and then meet their needs, meet their expectations, rather than I'll be out next week, or this patch will be up in a couple of weeks. It's like, no, we can keep going quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
Obviously, just tell us a little bit about how digital started, because I know that you had this thing of wanting to start a business, and what happened there? What was the journey on that score?
Yeah, I was about to go into a different job. We worked on and off on different projects for a decade, more now. So we've worked together a lot, but I've also worked with quite large e-commerce projects, and that was really fun and good. But eventually, we built a project called Genesis Brands, which was quite innovative at the time. And after that, I was going to go into a different role, into a really good position.
Yeah.
But we had a chat about the future, and you actually brought up really good points. You asked me, I think you challenged me on my purpose. You said, are you thinking 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead, or 10 years ahead? How are you approaching this decision?
Yeah.
And I think that question made me stop, and I said, you know what, actually, let's chat about this more.
Yeah.
It was such a profound question, like, how are you making this decision to take this position?
Yeah.
And so very quickly it became obvious that I'm not going to be happy, being a developer and not having input on the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird how I used to think that I'll always just do coding.
Yeah.
But in the last 3-4 years, about the time when we had that conversation, I realized that I love product.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I want to be involved at a level where, we can talk about the user. Yeah. We can go and look at the data. We can go and do a focus group. So I enjoy the whole 360 cycle.
And I think that was it. I think that was it. Taking a step back. It's not necessarily you leave the industry, but it's like you approach it from a much bigger perspective. Yeah. And I think that's why I love it. I love products. I love solving those problems and creating something really special that we're proud of. Now, obviously, digital work quite closely with creation. So whatever we build looks nice as well. There's obviously the whole UI, UX journey and stuff like that. But building products to solve complex issues using simple software is it for me. I love it.
It's great seeing, and this is why we made that agreement to start this company. Because I think both you and I had that shared passion for MVPs.
Yes.
For a faster way of working, for helping small businesses get up and running.
Yeah.
And so, if we look at the last 2 years, we're still, of course, very new in the industry.
Yeah.
But we've already helped multiple companies build quite innovative solutions.
Yeah. We've gone carbon footprint calculators, tax calculators we've been involved with. We can't really talk about too much about a project we just spec'd out, but there seems to be a niche as well where you've got people with an idea and you've got companies willing to finance it, but there's no one in the middle saying what to build. And I think that's probably what makes us different now. We can actually take people through what we call a discovery compass to tell them what to build.
Yeah,
which I don't think many people do.
No, it's traditionally, I think in most agencies you will have the whole onboarding discovery process, but it would be very long, quite a lot of red tape, very rigid protocol. And I think we've simplified it a lot. We basically built a product called a discovery compass, which allows us in just 1 or 2 workshops, depending on the project size. Pinpoint of what pain points are you trying to solve for users, and then we go away and put together a plan from maybe a different perspective than what the client was thinking.
Yeah,
because often clients are so close to the problem and the solution that having a third party come in, get a very minimal sense of an idea of what you're doing, go away and propose new solutions can be very helpful.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very new thing, new approach of handling specifications. We're not doing a full spec. We're
doing a spec enough to get them going. It's on that feedback loop, right?
Let's keep it as small as possible.
Yeah.
Let us discover where you want to head, and let us as experts propose the simplest possible solution that we think is going to be good enough to solve the problem and gather enough data to know what the next step should be.
Yeah. And I think with software, it's really important that there's the entry point, but it's knowing what next looks like and having the confidence to invest continually in what next looks like. And I think that's often what happens in larger projects. You complete the larger project and no one knows what next looks like because they're not even considered what the actual client wants or needs. It's based on assumption.
Yeah.
We must have this and it will make life better for us, when in fact it's not what the end user wants.
You have a design committee in the company.
Yeah.
And that's what drives the design.
Yeah.
Rather than the user need driving the design.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to say, let's move in incremental small steps. Mm-hmm. Let's be very iterative, very short feedback loops, 2 weeks, 1 month.
Yeah.
Let's ship updates as regularly as we can. And after each cycle, let's ask the user, what is working? What is not working? What is your pain point? And use that data to inform us. So
yeah, I think that, like we've been involved in a quite large project, moving away from no code. We've been in quite a large project where we've got years of feedback.
Sure.
That has allowed us to really update a legacy system.
Right.
And I guess that's the beauty of working with a larger company is that they can, they've got all that data and that feedback to say, right, no, we need it to be this way.
Yeah.
But certainly for a startup idea, you need the feedback as quickly as possible, and for me, that's why I'm really excited about the way the industry is going with no code. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of tech founders are as well now, because they're realizing that idea might not need a £500,000 investment.
Yeah.
It might only need a 5K, 10K debt spend, or even on a credit card just to get them going, to prove that this idea works or it doesn't,
Yeah, I believe that almost any idea in the software space, 95% of ideas can be tested within 6 weeks. We can build something really simple, very basic, whether it's a form to collect, some questions, a questionnaire, or something. We can do that in 6 weeks, I believe. That's the new benchmark.
Yeah.
Gone are the days when, you had to, as a founder, to wait 6, 12, 18 months to test your initial idea. That no longer works.
And it goes back to the thing of the technology. So the execution of meeting that need at the given time.
Yeah.
So you might do 6 weeks to build it. Now invest that other 6 weeks that you were about building a compelling narrative and story. You know, the mission, the vision, the values, the value proposition. Build that, make it look exceptional.
Yeah.
Then build the functionality and say, let's say in 12 weeks, you're miles ahead than the company would have been. You know, in 12 weeks, you'll be further ahead than the company that had been trading for 2 years with no users.
Yeah, and as a dev, as a techie, I used to be one of those guys who would say marketing is dirty or evil, but you could build the best app. If nobody knows about it, you know, we've just wasted all this time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's absolutely critical to spend as much effort on finding the people, getting it to the people who need it.
Exactly. And I think I've learned as well with working with you is that even my version of an MVP was way too big. You know, we talked about Genesis Brands as a project, you know. We certainly built a whole load of stuff. We learned how we built it. It worked. It was brilliant. But there was a whole load of learning and we could have got feedback a heck of a lot quicker. And I think tackling that project again, I think, you know, we're already talking about how do we get the feedback loop on that project as well to go where the market is now, because obviously technology has moved on. So what would you say to someone then who's like they're in a job, they've got an idea, and what would you say would be the best thing to do for them? Would they go and approach an agency with no code, or would they try and build it themselves, or would they essentially, you know, get some consultancy? What would your advice be?
Yeah, it depends what kind of business the person wants to start. You know, if a person is technical and loves tinkering with tools, you know, maybe loves building models in Excel, and I think no code is accessible enough where somebody who is non-technical could approach it. You know, if let's say you want to build an app, have a look at adalo.com. It's a really cool piece of software. Lets anyone learn it in about a week or two. Enough to a point where a non-technical founder could build a prototype, you know, in a month.
And get it going. Get some feedback.
But, you know, that's not for everyone, because some people don't want to touch that anyway, even though it is quite easy to pick up. And in those cases, find a freelancer or an agency that does use these tools. And get ask for a rapid prototype.
I guess I call it the procrastination programmer. What I mean by that is I remember being in an entrepreneurial program, and there was one individual that was building out the technical solution. It took them 6 months for a 6-month program to build it. He didn't make one single sale. And that was just a miss all the way around, whereby a person should have had something up in 6 weeks and then gone out. What he does best is selling the vision. And then by selling the vision, he would have created some income where he could then begin to outsource some of the technical stuff. And I think sometimes that procrastination programmer hides behind the programming because they enjoy it and not really taking the responsibility of, does the market want the idea?
So you know, the advice, you know, for somebody who wants to start a business and needs an app, or even an established business who wants to try to build an internal tool to do something. I think, it depends really on where the team is. If they're more technical, try tools like Adalo, Bubble. If not, reach out to an agency. But I think the key of all of this is it's important to be careful to not fall into, you know, the traditional 6, 12, 18-month kind of cycles. Because, you know, it's so easy to be quoted a huge amount of money and get something that doesn't quite work. You know, in 2022, find an agency that works with rapid prototyping tools and can get something up and running in a couple of months, you know, max.
And I think that just allows us to just quickly major on a little bit of established companies, because established companies have got ideas that they've left on the table for years. and might not have the cash flow to go and execute them. But I think that's where no-code comes in as well, is that those established companies, those medium-sized businesses go, that idea we had, actually, we're willing to put 10 grand behind it just to see if it works, or build tools that can simplify their life. I think it was out of reach 2 or 3 years ago. I think now it's firmly in the target to make happen.
Yeah. There's loads of tooling, and of course, in the enterprise world, if you look at larger companies, no code. No, we say no code, but such platforms have been there for decades and decades, right? Since the beginning of software. Talk of even Microsoft, SharePoint, Salesforce.
It's more acceptable now, isn't it?
All of that is no code, but I think now what's happening is you're getting these tools like Bubble, where you're not limited to Salesforce way of doing things.
Yeah.
In Bubble, you start with a canvas and you start building things how you want. And so, if you are a small business, have a look at Bubble, have a look at Softer, tools like that, because even somebody within the team might spend a week or two with a tool and be able to build a couple of forms, a couple of databases. There's a lot you can do internally within the skill set of the company. It's kind of like Excel on steroids. And of course, if you want to build something a bit more complex, then getting professional advice from a no-code agency is always worth it. Just to avoid going down the wrong path. It can save a lot of time too.
Yeah. So, ultimately, it's about building software fit for purpose at the end of the day. And, for me, making software simple is obviously what we're involved with, making products and getting them out there to get universal feedback as quickly as possible. So, Andrius, thanks for your time. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed talking code and talking products and stuff.
Talking no code
as well. And, I'm sure we'll get you back for some more conversation on that subject. But if you want to reach out, where would they find more about what you're doing?
I think, to be honest, the best place is our website.
Okay.
Digital.co.uk. So it's DI number 9. ITAL.co.uk.
That's right.
And it's all quite new, but we are building a blog section. So the idea is to start posting insights regarding the no-code revolution.
Absolutely.
And giving insights to companies of how they can save a lot of money and modernize legacy tools in the company.
What's great is it's in a world of disruption with code, that industry is being disrupted by no code.
Right.
Which is amazing. And I think now is probably the most exciting time to build tech tools because they're more affordable than they were a couple of years ago. And obviously, in the situation we find ourselves in, the economic climate and stuff like this, it might be worth you taking that time and actually putting that idea on the table and actually moving it forward. Using some of those tools, or if you need help, getting an agency.
It's the best time to do that.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you so much, Andrius.
Great chatting to you.
Really enjoy you. Thanks, everybody. Tune in next time for our next Purpose People podcast. Thank you.